What makes the avatar the avatar? Seems like a simple answer on the surface, but there is a lot more to being the avatar than glowing eyes and bending all four elements. So what exactly are these responsibilities, and how did they come by those? Welcome to the Amagi, where in this episode of Avatar Answers, we're going to be talking about what being the avatar means and what responsibilities come with that. Before we begin, we publish new content every day, so be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. Physical powers. By far, the most visible power an avatar possesses is the ability to bend all four elements at once, whereas ordinary benders are limited to just one. This might seem incredibly basic, but we have to work our way from the ground up here. Just going by this, even without getting the avatar state involved yet, already gives avatars an edge when it comes to bending prowess, at least according to Iroh.
Understanding others, the other elements, and the other nations will help you become whole. It is important to draw wisdom from many different places. If we take it from only one place, it becomes rigid and stale.
All this four elements talk is sounding like avatar stuff.
It is the combination of the four elements in one person that makes the avatar so powerful.
Just by this fact alone, the fact that in the past avatars had to travel the world and would spend years soaking up wisdom from all places, they could use the elements in ways that would perhaps be unconventional. We already went deeper into this in our Unusual Styles video, but for a few quick examples, both Korra and Kyoshi employ a very aggressive and direct style of airbending when it's normally much more about flow. When pushed to the edge, Aang uses an airbending slice to cut a buzzard wasp in half that resembles waterbending. And even Kyoshi's weapons don't make any sense because she uses fans to augment her earthbending, but only because she inherited those from her airbending mother. They might be aware of moves and potential for drawing inspiration from other elements that people who are limited to just one might not be. Of course, this does come with the risk that they are a jack of all trades and master of none. Both Aang and Korra each only demonstrate proficiency in 2 sub-skills across 4 elements, and not even the same ones. Whereas most benders we see who can only bend one element usually learn 1 or more sub-skills of theirs. This would help explain why Kuvira can hold the upper hand in a one-on-one fight against Korra, though Korra was still in fairly lousy shape. Or when Aang faced Ozai, they both had their firebending enhanced, but even factoring in Aang's reluctance to kill, Ozai was overall the superior combatant, right up until Aang went into the avatar state. But without getting that involved, these fights can be much more even than one would otherwise expect. But of course, the avatar state is a factor that has to be considered, and it is what truly makes the avatar so powerful. The feats of bending the avatars display are staggering, and include, but are not limited to, long-range fire whips that would ordinarily take 5 benders to generate, creating entire tsunamis, compressed rock bullets, hurricane-force winds capable of grinding pillars of solid rock to dust in seconds, and even manipulating tectonics to separate giant landmasses. These are the things that most people think about when you mention the Avatar. This power comes from Rava's spiritual energy, and even has previous avatars briefly possess the body of the current Avatar to help them out with their skills and abilities. Anyone faced against such an opponent would do well to run very far away, because they wouldn't be the first to die after standing their ground. But this is limited, and the risk avatars take by entering the avatar state is twofold. 1, they can't die. If they die while they are in the avatar state, the cycle ends, and there won't be any more avatars after them. This is why most fully realized avatars only briefly enter the avatar state, summoning the energy necessary to perform whatever extraordinary feat of bending they want to, and not risk the cycle. However, this is something that has to be mastered, which brings me to point 2. Before avatars have mastered the art of going in and out of the avatar state at will, they can be a bit of a loose cannon, a threat to their friends almost as much as they are to their enemies, and frequently cause significant collateral damage. Roku destroyed the original temple on Crescent Island this way, and Aang, well, take your pick. But once they have mastered this trick, being able to summon the avatar state at will, plus having a good enough handle on bending the 4 elements, they are considered fully realized. Bridge between 2 worlds.
The spirits must stop fighting with humans and return to their home in the spirit world. I will teach men to respect the spirits so that balance will be maintained. I will be the bridge between our two worlds.
This brief little job description from Avatar Wan is pretty vague, but it does give us some insight into the original purpose he wanted the Avatar to have. He didn't ever plan for the Avatar to become a political and military position, or even to make it a position at all. Those are things that just sort of happened along the way. But having spent a lifetime around people living in fear of the spirits, and rightly so, given what they can do to humans, his decision to close the spirit portals can be understood. And in doing so, he became effectively the first worldwide spiritual leader. But because the spirits and humans live largely separated, the Avatar's role almost immediately became much more about keeping peace between human tribes than it was between humans and spirits. Wan was, after all, the world's most powerful bender by quite a margin, and thus had the power to try and keep people from fighting each other as much as possible. But this power was not limitless, as ultimately, Wan died on the battlefield, and quite an unceremonious death for the first Avatar. This does suggest that whatever kind of regard the Avatar is held in, it took some time for this to settle into the minds of people. Now, there were some spirits that slipped through the cracks between the two worlds, as Avatar Yangchen would find out. She ended up fighting with a spirit called General Old Iron, but when their fight proved that neither was really capable of beating the other, she struck a deal with him. It wasn't until Aang's time that humans reneged on the deal and Old Iron returned, but this time was defeated by Aang. The spirit went on to accuse Aang of always going to side with humans instead of the spirits, given that he was human. Korra would implicitly be accused of this as well a good 70 years later. Thing is, Old Iron wasn't wrong here, but one could easily argue that that was the original purpose Avatar Wan had in mind when he declared his mission. After all, Wan grew up in a world where people lived in fear of the spirits, so now humanity had someone to fight on their behalf who stood a real chance. This was further proven by Avatar Karuk, who spent much of his time as the Avatar hunting dark spirits that crept through the cracks and threatened people, at a great cost to himself. The enormous toll this took on his body greatly contributed to his early death at only 33 years old. But this also brings up another point, namely that the spiritual side of things wasn't the job of the Avatar on their own. The Earth Kingdom and Fire Nation had a dedicated class of sages whose job it was to commune with the spirits where necessary and meditate on the spiritual side of bending. One of their more practical duties also includes finding the new Avatar when the previous one died, which is often easier said than done. For example, even though Kyoshi was a servant in the house of the head sage in the Earth Kingdom, it took him until she was in her late teens to realize that she was the next Avatar. On the other hand, the Fire Sages knew that Roku was the next Avatar before he even knew himself, and announced it on his 16th birthday precisely. This dedicated class wasn't really necessary for the air nomads, as all airbenders grew up in temples surrounded by monks and nuns, and they would put airbenders born around the death of the previous fire avatar through a simple test of picking 4 toys from among thousands, these 4 toys having belonged to past avatars. Which leaves the water tribes, where there was a class of sages as well according to the shadow of Kyoshi. However, given that it fell to the White Lotus to find Korra, it's likely this class didn't survive the Fire Nation raids during the 100-Year War, at least in the south. Political powers. The Avatar existing as a keeper of balance between the 4 nations brings with it some interesting implications. For starters, the societal structure of the world is very hierarchical, with it being difficult to move up through the ranks. In every nation except the Air Nation, there is a distinct noble class, often with one family on top who is the noblest of them all. Their crowns are passed down through the generations, most often from father to son, usually with a fairly loose power structure underneath them, consisting of local lords and even some vassal kings. This is in sharp contrast with the Avatar, a lifetime appointment from birth, not bound by class or gender, and yet is one of the most influential figures in the world. This can be both a blessing and a curse. Frequently, the Avatar is seen as an outsider meddling in internal business, which both Korra and Kyoshi were accused of. Then there are smaller things, like customs and culture that can pose problems. Toph mentions how Aang would stick out like a sore thumb in Earth Kingdom high society, and Kyoshi struggled against the Fire Nation customs, which are so complicated that they are pretty much just a trap for the unwary. But this lack of allegiance can also help, with the Avatar being uniquely suited to act as a neutral mediator when needed. This is also why it is considered important that the Avatar travels the world in their youth, to make sure they absorb influences from all the nations and cultures, to make sure they understand the perspectives the opposing sides are coming from when a conflict does arise. But there's no official rulebook for Avatars to follow, and in fact, they've done the exact opposite in the past. Avatar Setso chose to work in the Fire Nation government and just work his way from the bottom up, ultimately becoming one of the most influential advisors to the Fire Lord of the time. He is credited largely with bringing peace to a nation in turmoil and setting up aid for the poor, all through regular government channels without any extreme feats of his bending prowess being recorded. His efforts were very successful, and he remained a popular figure in the Fire Nation long after his death. Different opinions still remain open. Kyoshi swore an oath never to work for the authorities, only with them. This did cause conflict with Fire Lord Zoryu, but ultimately he didn't have much choice but to accept that that was how she wanted to execute her duties. And Avatars continue to be political powerhouses, as Korra was a key figure in the Southern Water Tribe gaining independence from the North, and in King Wu's plan of abolishing the Earth Kingdom monarchy in favor of a democratic republic. Military might. But of course, the Avatar is not just hailed as a political and spiritual leader from birth just because they can bend all four elements, but because they are by far the most powerful bender in the world. A common thread throughout history is that rulers who oppose the Avatar generally aren't rulers for very long. Either that, or they fall into line with the Avatar's will pretty quickly. In no small part, this is because in the past, both in the show and in real life, there was much more overlap between being a political leader and being a military strategist. Any army taking on a fully realized Avatar would end not well. Chin proved this. Kyoshi faced him and his army alone, but a brief show of force of her in the Avatar state, and his army scuttled away while Chin fell to his death. Sozin shelved his plans of invading the Earth Kingdom for years because Roku would have been there to stop him if he didn't. Aang fought off an entire fleet of Fire Navy ships in a matter of moments, though with help from the Ocean Spirit. And Korra halted Kuvira's invasion of the United Republic despite being up against the most powerful weapon ever devised. Fully realized Avatars have a habit of fending off invading forces into any country, regardless of whether it is their home country or not, but they are usually against the aggressor in an attempt to maintain balance. But let's rewind to Sozin, because he actually proves to be an interesting case study for this particular subject. When he first laid out his plans to Roku, it was pretty clear that Sozin wanted the Avatar on his side, and was actually expecting that to happen. With the technological advantage the Fire Nation has historically had over the other nations, and the Avatar leading the way, any war to conquer more territory would have indeed been a short one. Sozin had been harboring these thoughts at least since he was 28 years old, but Roku's rejection of his plans immediately saw him put them on hold. He prepared the final invasion of the Earth Kingdom to set up the colonies in secret, given how it caught Roku by surprise. But 17 years had passed between him first bringing it up with Roku and him actioning his plans. Now here, the history is a little bit hazy, because it's not fully clear what happened to the first colonies between Roku telling Sozin to stop the invasion and Roku's death 25 years later. What is clear is that time frame though. After Roku's death, it would be another 12 years before the Great Comet, later renamed Sozin's Comet, would return, and Sozin still used it in an attempt to take out the Avatar. Now the fact that Aang was born in the smallest, least powerful nation that didn't have a standing army helped, but even so, Sozin saw a 12-year-old Avatar as enough of a threat to wipe out an entire nation, because small Avatars do grow up, and once they do, Sozin's grandson found out the hard way that that does not end well. Sozin knew that his army would have a technological advantage, which did allow the Fire Nation to keep their war effort going for a century, but even so, he halted his plans for a total of 54 years, all because he knew that fighting the Avatar was a battle his nation could not win. Conclusion. The Avatar has been an enormously influential figure throughout history, and this influence isn't going anywhere. In fact, with the spirit portals open again and humans and spirits free to roam each other's worlds, it's very likely that the Avatar's influence will only increase further, as a keeper of balance between the humans and spirits will be more important than ever. In politics, it has always been seen as a big plus to have the Avatar on your side, and in the military, just even the idea of the Avatar opposing a leader has been enough to dissuade them from going to war. The position itself started almost as a happy coincidence, but has been instrumental in maintaining balance over the centuries, and will continue to do so for a long time. Did you enjoy our video? Be sure to check out these other great videos from the Amagi, and make sure to subscribe and ring the bell to be notified about our latest videos.